Fanatics, this is College Football with Sam, and what's on today's menu is Big Ten and SEC power rankings coming out of spring, and now that it's June, entering the summer months. All I'm going to do is spend about a minute, maybe a little over a minute, but around 60 seconds talking about each team. We're going to start with the SEC, then go to the Big Ten, and we'll start off each discussion about each conference going from who I think is going to be the worst team to the best team, briefly touching on their players, coaches, what I think the direction of their program is, etc., all in 60 seconds. Very brief. There will be more detailed videos on these specific teams and conferences when I do conference predictions and even when I release team schedule predictions. So make sure, if you haven't already, to hit the subscribe button, and more importantly, to like the video and hit the notification bell. That way you can get notified when we go live Sundays, Mondays, and Wednesdays, usually at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. I just wanted to make sure that things looked good cosmetically and that I was in the right space to talk about this, because these are important. There may be some adjustments made, but I've done so much research on the Big Ten and SEC that I feel ready to do this. And afterwards, I will be doing a question and answer session. For those of you who are live, super chats are encouraged. That way it's guaranteed that I will answer your question. But I'm going to try and answer as many questions as possible. Super chats are encouraged strongly, but not required. I'll answer all of your questions, as many as I can, for a certain period of time after I do my Big Ten and SEC power rankings. And also, comment your thoughts down below. Engage with us, even if we're not live. After it's uploaded, comment down below, and I'll try my best to answer what you have to say. First and foremost, we're going to start off with my post-spring SEC power rankings. The SEC has gone 2 years without winning the national championship. But before that, I don't know how many national championships in a row it was, but it was 19, 20, 21, 22, 4 national titles in a row. And without Clemson and Florida State and Ohio State interrupting them for a combined 4 years in between 2006 to 2022, they won just so many national championships in a row, so many in such a short span. I still believe that this is the best conference in college football. I question whether or not the teams at the top of the SEC are the best teams at the top. I think the Big Ten may have better teams towards the top, but the SEC's depth is unparalleled, and it's not contested. It's just a non-negotiable. I think Mississippi State, Kentucky, Arkansas, some of these programs that have been down recently care more about football than your Purdue's, Northwesterns, UCLA's, etc. But I'm going to spend 60 seconds around there talking about these SEC teams. We'll start from who I think is going to be the worst team in 2025 to the best team in 2025. Make sure to tell me down below who you think the best SEC team will be in terms of power rankings. So maybe not necessarily finish, but who will be the best quality team in the SEC for 2025. Comment your thoughts down below, and make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, and also, most importantly, hit that notification bell. You will not want to miss any future college football content we do here on College Football with Sam. And check the video description for a link to the Discord server, or if you want to donate to the channel, you can sign up on my Patreon page, with YouTube memberships coming soon. We will start off with Mississippi State, who I think is going to be the worst team yet again in the SEC. I do think they will improve, but I question Jeff Lebby as a head coach. I question their roster building strategy, and I don't know how much patience, how long of a leash he will be given. I mean, they finished 2-10 in the SEC, 0-8. They were 16th. They got blown out by Toledo. Teams did not take them seriously in the SEC, which in my mind was the only reason why they played anyone competitively. I watched their game against Texas A&M the other day because I'm a college football nerd, I guess. And it was so fascinating at how it seemed A&M was effortlessly leading them, effortlessly scoring on them. And it was year one under Elko, inheriting a poorly developed roster from Jimbo Fisher, and Mississippi State was playing their hearts out, and it wasn't enough. They're very limited. In this video, I'm also going to give a sneak peek of how many all SEC players I have. My all conference teams, all American teams are much larger than others because I like to highlight more players. I have a total of 6 teams. 2 are honorable mention. 4 I classify as all conference teams. I only have 2 Mississippi State players, and 4 of them, including the honorable mentions. Only 2 on the top 4 teams and 4 on the top 6 teams. I do not think they're very talented, and they're riding a lot in the transfer portal. So I'm not optimistic about Mississippi State. Up next, we have Kentucky at 15th. I was genuinely surprised that Kentucky went 4-8 and 1-7 in conference. In hindsight, I'm surprised they beat Ole Miss, let alone competed with them. They were 15th in the SEC, missed a bowl game for the first time since 2020 under Mark Stoops, and if not for a massive buyout, I think Stoops would be and should be on the hot seat. Kentucky no longer expects to go 6-6 every year. I mean, they expect to win 7, 8 games, maybe 9, depending on how old and experienced and deep the roster is, combined with whether or not they have an advantageous schedule. They don't this year. We're not here to talk about schedules, though, just team quality. I only have 4 all-SEC players for Kentucky, and those are in the top 4 teams. That's spread amongst a lot of teams, and 10 for the top 6 teams. So this team does have some depth. I think they're much better than Mississippi State, for example, but that's a low bar to cross when Mississippi State's much closer to Purdue or a MAC team than anyone else in the SEC. I'm curious to see how Zach Calzada does, and I think that their offensive line with Joshua Braun and Alex Wolschlager are some areas of strength, the offensive line is, along with maybe some defensive players. But it's going to be a long road up from where they were last season. We now move on to Arkansas, a team that is just in such dire straits given their passion and history, where Josh Pate, the first thing he said when talking about Sam Pittman being on the hot seat was, I don't know. And it felt like he got stabbed when he said that. Like, I don't know. Like a powerful start, long drawn-out finish. I think that's how you sound when you're stabbed. I think that's what Christopher Lee said in an interview talking about how a man reacts when he's stabbed, or how anyone reacts when stabbed. Arkansas was lifeless last year for large parts. They went 7-6 because Talon Green's a good quarterback and Petrino's a good play caller. But 3-5 in the SEC, 11th. They beat a bad Texas Tech team in the Liberty Bowl. I'm not high on them at all this year. In total, 3 all-SEC players for me, 7 in the 6th and 5th teams included with the top 4. I think that Talon Green is probably their best overall player at quarterback, along with Cameron Ball, and they lost a lot in the portal and aren't bringing in adequate talent to replace those losses. At 13th, I have Vanderbilt. What a come up for Vanderbilt. I mean, seriously, they bring back over 70% of their production, 7-6, 3-5 in conference, and they played almost everyone competitively. 12th in the SEC and beat Georgia Tech handily in the Birmingham Bowl. Tech made it look closer than the final score indicated with some late scores. I love Diego Pavia. I think his upside's limited, but he's gutsy, he's smart, he's experienced, can help him win. I think that Jordan White was a huge addition in the portal, so I believe Vanderbilt massively upgraded their roster. They're going to be much better in power ratings, and I think consequently power rankings are just non-computerized. I would feel guilty to say these are power ratings because we're human. We all have our biases. I try to be as objective as possible and think I am pretty objective, but I'm not a computer system or algorithm. So that's why I call these power rankings. Vanderbilt will definitely be improved in power ratings, though, with how much they bring back. Stowers might be the best tight end in the nation, and Miles Capers at D-end and Brian Longwell at linebacker are some players that I like, and they have a good kicker in Brock Taylor. they could contend for winning some more games this year and maybe earning a few upsets, but it's going to be hard with their talent limitations. That's why I don't have them higher than 13th, even though they'll be one of the most experienced teams in the SEC. And finally, they're not the worst in the SEC. So that's a good thing for Vanderbilt and Clark Lee. I think from here, you approach a cliff and you rapidly accelerate up, and then you plateau. And from here on out, there's going to be a lot of teams bunched together. South Carolina at 12th is probably much lower than most have them. And I can see with Lenora Sellers, and if their portal additions pan out, combined with returning a guy like Dylan Stewart and bringing back DQ Smith, that they could be much better. But their offensive line wasn't all that great last year, and they lose a lot of production there. Their D-line and defense was the strong point, and they lose a ton. They lose their starting linebackers, all of them, all of their starting defensive tackles. I don't think they adequately replaced those, like Tonka Hemingway, for example, in the portal, or TJ Sanders. Dylan Stewart and Brian Thomas Jr. could be the best DN duo in college football, but you need more than just an elite DN duo. I love DQ Smith, Jalen Kilgore, Brandon Sissy, and Judge Collier. They should have a great DB room. And then Nick Harbor could be a breakout player with that freakish athleticism at wide receiver. Imagine if he played D-end at South Carolina. That'd be the best three-headed monster at D-end in college football. It might even be a generational one. And I think Sellers will be awesome. But there's just enough missing pieces to where I'm hesitant at putting them higher than teams in front of them. Very high ceiling with an elite, potentially elite QB. I'd say for now just good or great. But they could also have a very low floor, so I'm factoring that in as well. You look at Auburn. Auburn went 5-7 last year. In case you're upset with me that I didn't mention South Carolina's record, 9-4, had an amazing season, and I only have 7 All-SEC players on there, 10 in terms of depth, including the 5th and 6th team. For Vandy, that's 6th All-SEC players, 13th All-SEC depth. Auburn, I'm not going to talk much about other than a few seconds because it's do or die for Hugh Freeze. They've recruited well, but Freeze hasn't earned any signature upsets or big wins like he did at Ole Miss, where he was a demon against the top 10, but occasionally slipped up. It's only been slip-ups here. I don't believe in Jackson Arnold. I believe in Auburn's offensive line and defense. I think Caleb Wheatland, linebacker from Maryland, was a big addition in the portal, and I believe that Malik Blockton, Robert Woodyard Jr., Caleb Harris, Jay Crawford, all these players, all on defense, are going to have a huge year. And then Xavion Miller, Jeremiah Wright, Xavier Chaplin, and then the star center Connor Liu should make an awesome offensive line. And then we can't forget about Eric Singleton Jr., Cam Coleman, Malcolm Simmons. I love their wide receiver room. But at the end of the day, I don't love Jackson Arnold at quarterback. I don't. And their schedule is tough. It's front-loaded. So if this team doesn't come out hot, they're going to suffer a ton of losses, and I think that'll take some air out of the tires. We have Tennessee at 10th. Tennessee was originally higher than this before, Nico left because he wanted a raise when he didn't deserve it. They went 10-3 last year, appeared in the college football playoff, and almost played in the SEC championship game. If they just beat Arkansas or Georgia, just one of those, they would have played against Texas for the SEC championship game. Tennessee has 10 All-SEC players, and including the honorable mentions, the 5th and 6th teams, as I'll repeat again because my teams are probably confusing to most people, I have 19 overall players. Definitely more talented in my mind than Auburn, South Carolina, or anyone below them. Auburn had 9 All-SEC players, 15 once you included the honorable mention teams. I have a lot of questions at quarterback. I have some questions at defense because of how much they lose, but this could be the best cornerback room in America with Jermond McCoy and Ricky Gibson III coming back, and then Boo Carter returns and Colton Hood transfers in from Colorado. And that, against a conference with a lot of newer or young quarterbacks, is going to give them some advantages. They also have a good linebacker in Jeremiah Tillander, and I think Joshua Josephs is going to be their next great defensive end. Another question for them is with how much they lose on the O-line and at wide receiver, can they reload there? There's a good chance this team wins 9 or 10 games again, but there's also a really good chance they could go 6-6 or have a losing record with how many questions they have and how low their returning production is. At 9th, we have the Ole Miss Rebels. This is a team that could improve on last year's win total or go 5-7. And that's with a schedule that's probably easier than Tennessee's. This team probably has the widest variation of outcomes in the entire conference. Maybe only surpassed by Alabama. But follow me. Kiffin goes 10-3, 5-3. They're 4th in the SEC. They crush Georgia. They handily beat Oklahoma. They put up 70, 60, and 50 burgers in their non-conference games, and they lose to LSU in overtime. Not that bad. It's hard to win in Death Valley at night, although Alabama just won by 30 last year. But point withstanding, they lose to Kentucky, and they lose to Florida. I have no idea what to think of Lane Kiffin. The only positive in my mind is Austin Simmons, who I actually have as a first-team All-SEC QB. I have 2 first-team All-SEC QBs, so that also explains why my teams are much larger. I'll explain it in a different video, talking about the All-Americans and All-Conference teams that I have. But I have Austin Simmons and Arch Manning as the 2 best quarterbacks in the SEC, kind of a bold prediction from me. And they have awesome wide receivers in DeJon Stribling, Caden Lee, Daquan Wright, and Luke Hasz, I think will make great tight ends. They lose so much on defense, and I don't think they did a great job replacing there. And I still have questions about whether or not they can run the football. So 10 All-SEC players, 17 when you include the honorable mention teams. I expect this team to take a huge step back in power ratings, but with an easy schedule, they could improve on their win total or match it from last year. At 8th, we're finally cracking the top half, ladies and gentlemen. We have the LSU Tigers. A lot of people, so many people think that LSU is this top 2 SEC team. And I'm going to rant for 50 seconds here. I don't get it. I don't get it. Garrett Nussmeier could be a great NFL QB, but in watching so many of his games, turnover. There are more turnovers that he commits than plays that make me genuinely think, wow. That's not good when you're losing elite offensive tackles, when you're relying on the transfer portal that much to improve, and your best overall position coach in Bo Davis is gone. I don't like it. I think that LSU will be a good team. I think they'll be a top 25 team. I think they will probably be around the same or a little bit better than last year, which, given how much they lost at positions that carried them last year, I think is impressive. But I'm sorry, losing to Alabama by that much, losing in the fashion they did to A&M, to Florida, losing to a USC team who couldn't win a close game to save their life. I question Brian Kelly's coaching. I question his approach. And they have not recruited at the level that they did under Ed Orgeron, even, at least by the rankings. So I'm just saying, this is a big year for Kelly, and I don't see it. I have him tabbed with 13 All-SEC players, 17th when you include the depth. They are nowhere near Alabama, Georgia, Texas, or in my mind, even A&M. Roster-wise. They're just not. This is the one trend I'm bucking. I'm not buying LSU. Almost everyone else is. I am not buying them. Because if they just go 9-3, they're probably missing the playoffs. If they go 8-4, well, Kelly might be fired at the end of the year. Just saying. Number 7, we have Oklahoma. Oklahoma's a total wild card. They could have a losing record, or they could win 8 or 9 games. They don't quite have the ceiling of a lot of other teams because their schedule's tough. And you saw that wear on them last year. They played in a bunch of close games. They got blown out by Texas. They got humiliated pretty handily by Tennessee. Oklahoma made that game look a little bit closer at the end than it was. I'm higher on them than, let's say, LSU or some other teams like Tennessee or Ole Miss, because I think they have a lot of quality players in the SEC. 13 all-SEC guys, 19 if you include the honorable mentions. Looking at their defense, you have Dominic Williams, Jaden Jackson, Grayson Halton, and David Stone. I have 4 D tackles on my all-SEC teams from Oklahoma. And Kip Lewis, Kobe McKenzie, Jaron Kanak, Sammy Omosigho. I hope that's how you say his name. 4 linebackers. And then I think Robert Spears-Jennings and Eli Bowen will be first-teamers at safety and corner. This defense is going to be impressive. I think that with Mateer and Ott, they'll at least be able to better manage the offensive line, and I think their O-line will also be better than it was last year. This team should improve everywhere on offense because it was Iowa-level bad last year in the metrics, and defensively they should still be great. So I'm optimistic about Oklahoma's chances to at least help Venables secure his job in 2025. You look at Florida. Now, Florida's a team that I want to sell as much as LSU. I think that Kelly is a way better coach than Billy Napier. I actually think that LSU is a much better staff than Florida. But I think that Kelly's approach to roster building has not panned out. And I think that because Florida just hasn't had the recent success over the past decade that LSU has, their expectations have been just a bit low enough to where showing any amount of hope gets you total buy-in. That plus DJ Lagway, who I think is an infinitely better quarterback, or at least will be compared to Garrett Nussmeier, is why I have them at 6th. They went 8-5, 4-4, and how people reacted to them would make you think they won 10 games. They didn't, and I don't think they will this year, but they do have a lot of upside to them and a ton of experience, and Napier gets his guys to play for him. That matters. It matters to get like Caleb Banks, Tyreek Sapp, great defensive linemen, to have Bryce Thornton, Sharif Denson, Devin Moore, good DBs, to have them buy in. And then to have DJ Lagway bought in. Lagway could win more games at many other programs. He could probably be better developed at other programs, at least from what I think right now. But he's bought in. Jaden Baugh is bought in. Jake Slaughter, potentially college football's best center, is brought in. I have Florida with 20 all-SEC players when you look at the 5th and 6th teams along with the top 4 teams, and 10 players in the top 4. This is a talented roster, an experienced roster, lots of upside. There's also a lot of a floor too, but with Lagway, especially if he's healthy, I think they can be a really good team this year, certainly a top 20 team in all of football. We have Missouri at 5th. Perhaps this is a surprise to people, but I am high on Missouri. I've been high on them ever since they had that 11-win season in 2023. I think Drinkwitz is a good coach, and I think that he has the appropriate buy-in needed from Missouri to succeed. I think they made really good additions, really sneaky good additions in the portal, whether it's on the offensive line, whether it's on defense. They won all their close games last year, so I don't think they're going to get much better record-wise, but in power ratings, they're going to go up. So that tells me that making power rankings in my mind, again, can't do ratings because I'm not a computerized, consistent algorithm. I'm my own person with a brain. I'll have inconsistencies. I think that Missouri will be a better quality team than they were in 2024. Ahmad Hardy, love him. I think Bill Prabula is underrated. They returned Connor Tollison, who was one of the best centers in America last year. Kevin Coleman, wonderful addition from the portal. And then on defense, Zion Young and Damon Wilson, that's a wonderful defensive end duo. And then I think Josiah Trotter was an underrated pickup at linebacker from West Virginia. This team is going to find ways to win. They're going to punch above their weight class. They're going to do what Drinkwitz has done the minute since he got to Missouri. So I love them. I think they're a top 20 team in all of football. Could they be contenders for the college football playoff? Yes. Could they also lose more than 3 games because of the law of close games and regressing to the mean? Yes. This is also a team that, due to what I think is a limited ceiling, I wouldn't be surprised if in a month or so when I redo these power rankings, they're much lower. At 4th, this is the point where you hit another cliff, and now you got to climb it, and then you hit another plateau. I have the Texas A&M Aggies. They return over 70% of their production. They finished 8-5, 5-3, and they have a top 10 talent roster in all of football. Now I know they didn't finish the year well. They started out 8-2, and went 0-3 in their final 3 games against Auburn, losing record, Texas, college football playoff semifinalist, and then USC, who almost had a losing record. Not exactly all that great. But I love Elko as a coach, and I have Texas A&M for now. That this could change as I do more research. I've researched the rosters the best I can, but the staffs for all conferences, I still have to finish those. Right now, I have A&M tabbed with the 3rd best staff in the SEC. It's actually better than Alabama's, who, hint, hint, is ahead of them. You'll have to figure out where. But I love their coordinators, their assistant coaches. I think Elko does more with less, and with how much talent he has, with the jump that good coaches typically make from year 1 to year 2, I expect this team to be a college football playoff contender. It all depends, their ceiling does, on Marcel Reed, and I think he'll be good. Great or elite, I don't know. If that's the case, they'll certainly be national championship contenders. But I love their running back duo with Moss and Daniels. I think Armaj Reed-Adams could be the best guard in the nation, and Trezon III and Demetrius Crownover are the best tackle duo in the SEC in my mind. Kevin Conception was a big get at wide receiver, and Albert Regis, Tyler Onyedim, Cassius Howell. That makes up, once again, a great defensive front, along with linebackers Scooby Williams, Tareen York, and they return Will Lee III, who had that pick 6 against Texas, their only touchdown in that game. They have a lot of veteran players. The continuity is going to get better. I'm very high on A&M. Under Jimbo Fisher, it was always a question of if they could break through. I think under Elko, it's a question of when they will break through. Now we kind of hit another climb, but not too much. I think Alabama is, and it should say Alabama there, not Georgia. But to be fair, Georgia almost also went 9-4 and 5-3. I mean, these teams were pretty similar last year. Alabama got the head-to-head win, of course, but then imploded as the season went on, I think because Georgia had a much better staff than Alabama did, and also had developed and built their roster better under the prior years of Kirby Smart than the final few years of Nick Saban. Regardless, I have Alabama ahead of A&M because I think their roster is a little bit better. A&M's staff is a little bit better as well, but Alabama, with how much talent they have and the fact that I think Kalen DeBoer is a top 5 head coach, makes it so that I think their ceiling is higher. When I look at Alabama, I have them pegged with well over 20 players on my All-SEC team. 22, counting the 5th and 6th teams, 19 overall. A&M, by the way, had 17, and then 21 overall, including the honorable mentions. So in terms of depth, a lot of these teams outside of the top 2, and you know who they are pretty similar, but the quality of starters, I think, goes up dramatically when you look at A&M and Alabama. Alabama's question is, can the offensive line gel? They have NFL talent there, but they've never been elite ever since 2020. I like Jam Miller at running back. I do not like Ty Simpson at quarterback. If I did, I'd probably have them at 2nd or maybe even 1st. But the fact that he didn't start over Jalen Milroe, and even as Jalen Milroe imploded, they never pulled the plug on him, I think tells me something about the state of him. The fact that he right now is the front runner and not a newer quarterback or a younger one like Austin Mack or Keelan Russell, the true freshman, for whatever reason, and maybe I'm wrong, that gives me some concerns. Ryan Williams, Jeremy Bernard, and then Isaiah Horton. That's a 3-headed monster at wide receiver, though. And I don't have enough time to do this, but their defense is awesome. Just think about how Deontay Lawson and Tim Keenan III come back, and then all the other players that return too. We have Georgia at number 2. The Bulldogs, 11-3 last year, 6-2, second in the SEC, lost in the quarterfinals to Notre Dame. This was Kirby Smart's worst team since 2016, his first year. Now, I have questions about Gunnar Stockton. In fact, I don't have him as a top 4 SEC quarterback. Don't even have him as a top 6 SEC quarterback. He's like right in the middle of the pack. I'm projecting a little bit. I have faith to a certain degree in the talent that Georgia has at all positions. I do love Nate Frazier and Josh McCray at running back. I think their offensive line can somewhat reload. Most importantly, Noah Thomas, Colby Young, Dylan Bell, and Zachariah Branch is going to be their deepest wide receiver room in quite some time, potentially Smart's deepest ever at Georgia. Then you factor in Lawson Lucky, Oscar Delp, and then on defense, I love Christian Miller, Xavier McLeod, Gabe Harris, Elo Madozi on the D-line. C.J. Allen, Raylan Wilson, and Chris Cole, I think, make up one of the best, if not the best, linebacker duo in college football. Their secondary has some questions too, but I think Kirby Smart and Glenn Schumann on defense, and then Peyton Woodring at kicker and Brett Thorson at punter, and think about Zachariah Branch as a returner, gives them a special teams edge over almost any team they'll play all year. I have them with 23 All-SEC players, so more players inside my top 4 teams than anyone else has on their top 6 teams. And then in the top 6 teams, I have Georgia with 29 players. So 6 honorable mentions. I think they're deeper than anyone below them by a decent chunk. However, they're not as deep as Texas. Now, saying they won't beat Texas because Georgia was the vastly inferior team in my mind in terms of potential, especially to Texas last year, and they beat them twice. In fact, they kicked their rear to keep it PG, and you could go a step further. They kicked their rear last year twice, especially the first time, but they also did the second time. Texas is number 1, actually not mostly because of Arch Manning. They're number 1 in my book because of how they've recruited and developed on the O-line, the fact that they still have recruited freaks at wide receiver. They brought in a transfer in Jack Endries at tight end to replace Gunnar Helm. They have C.J. Baxter back from injury and return Quintravion Wisner, so they should be better at running the football. Better mobility at QB, healthier running back room, and I think the same skill position talent approximately as last year. On top of that, I love their D-tackle room, what they did in the portal. I love their D-ends. I think Colin Simmons might be the best defensive end in America. I have him as the number 1 D-end in the SEC. I have Anthony Hill as the number 1 linebacker in the SEC, and Michael Taff as the best safety in the SEC. They also upgraded special teams by bringing in punter Jack Bouwmeester and kicker Mason Shipley. 24 All-SEC players in my top 4 SEC teams, and 31 All-SEC players once you factor in the 5th and 6th teams as honorable mentions. I have Texas with the best staff in the SEC as well, Georgia barely coming in at 2nd. So number 1 staff and number 1 roster versus number 2 staff and number 2 roster is why Texas is ahead of Georgia. Georgia does have the head coach advantage, though. I think Smart's a much better head coach than almost said Kirby Smart. He might be a better head coach than Kirby Smart of a year or two ago. I think last year was Smart's best coaching job, but he's certainly better than Steve Sarkisian. So thank you all so much for watching. Really appreciate it. And make sure to hit the notification bell, subscribe, and check back in a few weeks when I'll redo these rankings. I'm going to try and do this probably every month or at least every other month for the remainder of the preseason because more content's better. I know you all love it. And we'll see you all very soon. And just because Texas is number 1, as you see on my screen, does not mean I'm picking them to win the SEC. You'll figure out soon enough, in hopefully a week or 2, when I have my SEC predictions official. Okay, took a little bit longer than I expected, but I think that's okay. I think that could deserve a 30-minute, segment. Again, we will still do a question and answer session after this. Let me quickly check the chat, see what all of you guys are thinking and saying. Make sure everyone, once again, just as a gentle reminder, that At the end, we'll do a question and answer session, and super chats are encouraged. That way, as I'll only be spending 10 to 15 minutes at most answering questions, your question can be out there, and I, for sure, will answer it. Thank you very much. And I just got a text that I have to answer, so I'm going to answer that very quickly. Yeah, just had to answer it. It's a text from my dad. I go on a walk with my dad, try to every night, not always successful, but it's physical activity when I'm sitting at a desk all day for work or school. So in addition to working out, lifting weights, that's kind of the cardio, and it's a chance to get outside, get some fresh air. It doesn't seem like the Michigan summer, or at least spring, is all that warm. I'm hoping that continues into summer. It's not too hot. I hate hot, humid summers. Hate it. Really like balanced weather. Anyway, let's get back to it. Who will the best teams be in the Big Ten? Who do you think wins the Big Ten in 2025? Ohio State was the favorite last year, and they won the national championship, but they did not win the Big Ten. In fact, they didn't even make it to Indianapolis, despite being the number one power-rated team. If you looked at FPI, I think in S&P Plus, Oregon may have briefly overtaken Ohio State. I forget. Anyways, it's not really all that important. The Big Ten has a lot of high-quality teams at the top. Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, and last year Indiana took the place of what many thought was going to be Michigan. But is the balance of power different entering 2025? That's what I want to answer today, spending 60 seconds, maybe a little bit more around there on each Big Ten team, starting from who I think will be the worst in 2025, and we'll finish with the best. So stay tuned and make sure before we begin to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. Liking the video and hitting that bell are the most important. Subscriptions are nice, but they're essentially gravy. Liking and hitting the bell does a lot more for me in terms of earning money and in terms for you in watching my content, making sure you get more quality content than simply hitting the subscribe button, although that's necessary to hit the notification bell, so it's important. Just do all those things, comment your thoughts down below, and enjoy. Let me know specifically who you think the best teams will be in the Big Ten. If you have the time even, give me your Big Ten power rankings. Let's get to it and start off with Purdue. And before I forget, I just want to let you all know that if you want to support the channel monetarily, or if you want to engage with me in a chat, join our Discord server via the link in the description and the links to a Patreon page and merchandise store where you can support the channel monetarily. They exist, so click on those. Purdue at 18th. That's it, honestly. I have no idea how they're going to be better than that. In terms of power rankings and power ratings, eventually my computerized power ratings will be out, hopefully before the season kicks off. They came out a little bit after the season kicked off last season, but I don't think we'll have that problem this year. Fingers and toes crossed. Purdue was perhaps the worst Power 4, Power 5 team of the 21st century. 1-11, 0-9, 18th in the Big Ten. I like the Barry Odom hire, but when I look at my All-Big Ten team and how talented they are, I have one All-Big Ten player. And that's on 6 teams. That includes the honorable mention, too. And he's Jack McAllister, the punter. I may have to do more research into Purdue's roster. Maybe I'm missing something. But that roster is made up of a bunch of transfers that probably wouldn't start for the most part at other Big Ten programs. It's going to be a long road up for Barry Odom, and he needs patience, first and foremost. At 17th, we have Maryland. Maryland went from going 7-6 and back-to-back 8-5 seasons to finishing 4-8, 1-8, and they beat a USC team that they shouldn't have beaten, but USC did that last year. They lost a lot of games, a lot of close games that Lincoln Riley typically doesn't lose. 17th in the Big Ten, and maybe in terms of conference record, they won't be 17th again, but I think in power rankings, I just realized it said ratings on the screen. That's my bad. That goes for my SEC one as well. I'll make sure to put that in the comment section below. Power rankings. I don't want there to be confusion. Evidently, I'm causing it, but I think you all get the point from my video title, from the video cover, and same with the comment as well that I'll have pinned, actually. You'll get the point. Power rankings. I'm not a computer. I can't accurately create ratings. But Maryland doesn't have all that much talent. I think their hope is freshman quarterback Malik Washington, maybe Justin Martin, but if Malik Washington doesn't start, I really don't like their odds to do anything special. Most of their all Big Ten teamers are on special teams. I have one all Big Ten player, another one in the 5th and 6th teams, the honorable mention. I don't like where Maryland's heading. I don't think Mike Locksley's going to survive past this season. Next up, we have UCLA. 14th in the Big Ten, 5-7, 3-6. They lose a lot of guys. They also bring in a lot of guys from the portal, including Nico Imaliava and also Javion Thomas at running back. So their skill positions are better than some teams on this list for sure, on this Big Ten power rankings video. And I also like their special teams, especially Mateen Bagani, who I think is one of the better kickers in the nation. But only one all Big Ten player and 4 in terms of depth. I don't think they have any players who are the best of the best at whatever they do. And on top of losing so much production and having an inexperienced coach, I think that could come to bite them this year, especially since their schedule, while manageable, is far from easy, and they actually have a tough non-conference game against Utah. So what UCLA needs to do to have success this year, in my mind, is just keep fighting, much like they did last year. I thought it was impressive how Deshaun Foster's players played for him. They never gave up. They need some of that this year if they want to go bowling. We have Northwestern at 15th. The Wildcats, 4-8, 2-7 in the Big Ten. I love their defense, but that offense has questions. I'm very curious to see what Preston Stone does after he got benched last year and played terribly. Their best offensive player is tackle Caleb Tiernan, who I think is the 4th best tackle in the Big Ten. And then on defense, Aiden Hubbard at D-end, Mac Uthleyan at linebacker, Damon Walters at safety, and Josh Fussell at corner, along with incoming transfer Fred Davis at corner. I love those players on defense. They're on my 6 all-Big Ten teams. The majority of them are actually on the top 4 teams, which means they make the all-Big Ten list, and they're not honorable mentions like the 5th and 6th teams. My teams are much larger, and there's a higher quantity of them than most, because I think there's just so many good players, especially with super conferences, that it's only fair to dramatically expand the teams. Plus, it also serves as almost an accurate assessment tool of the roster. Since I'm not just looking at top-end talent or what the media thinks is top-end talent, I'm looking at even the 2-deep. There are some programs where they have their 3rd-string players on my all-Big Ten teams. Mostly honorable mentions, but still, there are some teams with serious depth. Northwestern's not one of them, and with their schedule and the fact that they keep losing their better players to the portal because it's a hard place to play at, it's a hard place to win, I imagine they don't have awesome NIL, they might be stuck in purgatory. I hope not, though. I'm ultimately rooting for David Braun. At 14th, we have the Washington Huskies. It might surprise you that I'm this low on Washington, but quarterback, well, the most important position on the field, is not going to win you 8 games on its own unless you're generational. And I don't quite think DeMond Williams Jr. is that. I'm high on him, by the way. I think that he is a top 3rd Big Ten quarterback, but I don't have him pegged at Drew Aller, Fernando Mendoza levels of proven. And I think that Bryce Underwood, Julian Sayin, and Dante Moore, in part because of their systems, but also because of their, what I think is better talent, I think they'll be better than him this year. I love Jonah Coleman at running back too, and I think that Carver Willis was a necessary add in the portal. He's going to be their best offensive lineman in a strong O-line conference. Denzel Boston, Kaliki Latu, Decker DeGraff are great receivers. Their biggest problem is on defense. They brought in Ryan Walters, and I don't know whether or not they have the players, the skill to run his defense. So I think the defense is what's going to determine their success this season. The offense, I think, will be good, but if their defense is not secure and it looks anything like Purdue's does last year, this is a team that could actually regress record-wise. And they went 6-7, 4-5, couldn't win a road game to save their life, but played a lot of teams competitively. I think that Jedd Fisch will succeed at Washington. I just think he's a year away or more. We have Rutgers at 13th in the Big Ten. Rutgers disappointed me last season. I thought this was a team that was going to win 9 or 10 games. Bold prediction, I know, but how Wisconsin blew them out, losing to UCLA at home, losing to that Nebraska team on the road, getting destroyed by USC. In truth, they were not a good team. They just weren't. Now, they do bring back 70% of their production. I do have them with 8 all Big Ten players, 13 including the honorable mention, 5th and 6th team. And Kaliak Manis, if he dramatically improves with Ian Strong, KJ Duff at wide receiver, and I have all 5 of Rutgers starting offensive linemen on my all Big Ten teams, I think their offense can be sneaky good. Combine that with a defense that was so bad and banged up at points last year, they're almost guaranteed to be better. And Rutgers could be a superior team to last year. Their schedule's tough, but this is a power rankings video, not a schedule and prediction video, so that'll be saved for another time. Make sure to hit the bell if you want to get notified when that video drops in the next week, maybe even next few days. I'll be dropping the Big Ten predictions video. Rutgers is a team that can definitely punch above their weight class, and with good special teams, offense that should be Shiano's best, and potentially good defense, pay attention to this team entering 2025. We have Michigan State at 12th. I'm higher on the Spartans than a lot of people. I think, speaking of Rutgers, what was it? 41 to 14 was the final score last year between Michigan State and Rutgers. I think that loss, the Indiana loss, and to a certain degree even the Michigan loss and the Illinois loss too really took the wind out of the sails for Jonathan Smith. I don't think people minded how they played against Ohio State and Oregon. I think they played against Ohio State admirably, and they played against Oregon as admirably as possible on a short week and factoring in the travel time. They did. But at the end of the day, they were talentless outside of a few of their starters, and as they got injured, their depth got exposed. I think with some of the portal additions they've made and the players they've retained, I think they've improved in that department. And Michigan State's a team where, look, I'm high on Aiden Childs. I think he'll be a top half quarterback in the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten actually has the deepest quarterback room out of all the conferences, especially at the top. I think the Big Ten is the best quarterback room, straight up, entering 2025. So Childs is going to be one of the better QBs in the nation in my mind. I like what they've done at tackle with Connor Moore, and I think they'll develop Stanton Ramel. And Nick Marsh and Jack Velling is a deadly wide receiver and tight end duo. On defense, they got some nice players like Grady Kelly from the portal, and I think Jalen Thompson's good. But then again, they are dealing with a roster left over from Scotty Hazelton, who was one of the worst defensive coordinators I've ever witnessed in my brief moment as a college football fan. I think Sparty is going to be really good this year. I think Michigan State, they just hired a new athletic director today at the time of this recording. Hired a new AD who I think does business, means business, and I think Jonathan Smith is one of the better coaches in the country, particularly at doing more with less. So I'm higher on Michigan State than a lot of people. I will tell you here and now, I think that they will win more games than some teams ahead of them by virtue of how good I think that staff is at punching above their weight class and scheming. We have Minnesota at 11th. They went 8-5, 5-4, and they won the Duke's Mayo Bowl because PJ Fleck always wins his bowl games. Michigan State, by the way, I had them with 7 all Big Ten players, 13 if you count the final 2 teams, the 5th and 6th team, the honorable mentions. Minnesota, I have 8 all Big Ten players, 15 if you count the honorable mention teams. This defense is loaded with talent. I mean, this comes across to me like a 2022 or 2023 Iowa defense, where they are that talented and could be that good. I don't know if they have the coordinator, though, or the corners. They're close, but I don't know if they're quite there. And they should be better on offense than those teams, but the problem is they do play a sneaky tough schedule, and the Big Ten West doesn't exist anymore. So I wonder what they'll do, especially with Drake Lindsey at quarterback. This is a team that could be way better than I think they'll be. They could also be even worse than I think they will be. I think that their win total of 6.5, and I don't bring up win totals too much because, again, this is a power ranking segment, not a schedule prediction segment. But I think their win total of 6.5 is probably pretty accurate. More likely than not, they'll go over than under. But this is a interesting team for sure when you just look at it. I think Coy Parrish is one of the best safeties in football, and I think that their D-tackle room is very underrated. You have Devin Eastern, Moa Monode, and Jalen Logan Redding. I mean, when you have more than 2 capable bodies at D-tackle and you're Minnesota, that's something to be proud of. And Darius Taylor at running back, he has a friend, and that friend is A.J. Turner. I think that could be the best running back duo in the country. Could be better than Penn State's and Notre Dame's. Not saying it is, but it could be. It has that potential. We have Iowa at 10th. The Iowa Hawkeyes. Wow. They went 8-5 last year despite being way better than the prior year's 10-14 in terms of power ratings. But that's what happens when you go from winning almost all your close games to, well, meeting reality, and you regress to the mean and you lose a lot of your close games. This should be the best offense of the Kirk Ferentz era. I love Mark Gronowski, and I think Kamari Moulton is going to do well with that offensive line that returns Logan Jones, Bo Steffens, Jennings Dunker, etc. And they also return Edison Ostrenga, Aaron Graves, Ethan Herkett, Max Llewellyn. I think that their offense will get much better, and their D-line will actually be better than it was last year. But linebacker, they're going to be much worse. It's going to be the same at corner and safety. They have good players still at linebacker, safety, and corner, but there's a chance that this Phil Parker defense could be even worse than last year's. Since he's a wizard, there's also a chance it'll be better than last season's. Regardless, I think that Iowa will probably be a top 30, top 35 team in power ratings again, not quite top 25 like they were last year in most power ratings, but they'll still be a good team. Their schedule's just tough as nails, though. Much tougher than it was last season. If there's anyone to overachieve with that, it's going to be Kirk Ferentz, especially now that he has an offense on top of having a good special teams unit and still some talent on defense to work with. 9th. Maybe this one's shocking to all of you. Take a pause and look at the screen if you don't know who I'm talking about. If you're not on YouTube or not actively looking at the screen or didn't want to, it's Wisconsin. Yes, I have Wisconsin dead center. In fact, a little bit above dead center in the power ratings for the Big Ten, or the power rankings. Apologies again. Sometimes I get those two terms mixed up, especially since I'm using power for both, and I accidentally printed on the screen power ratings. But they're close enough. I'm just making the distinction in my video title because I think since I'm not a computer, I'm not totally unbiased, and I can be inconsistent since I don't have all these, mathematics, scientific laws to hold computer ratings into check. I call them rankings because they're my personal power rankings. They're not, whether it's a system developed by me or someone else, a computer or algorithmic, if that's even a word, power ratings. Maybe I'm confusing all of you, but I think it's an important distinction to make, or try to make. But Wisconsin is a confusing team, speaking of confusion. They went 5-7 last year and got blown out by Iowa, Nebraska, and dominated by Minnesota. And yet they competed with Oregon, nearly upset them, and competed with Penn State as well. Talk about confusing. I have Wisconsin pegged with 8 all Big Ten players, 16 including the two deep, or not the two deep, but the 2 honorable mention teams. Iowa, by the way, had 12 all Big Ten players, but 15 when you looked at the honorable mention teams in addition to the top 4. I think Wisconsin is probably going to go bowling again this year. I know their win total suggests 5-7 is more likely than 7-5, but I love Billy Edwards and what he brings along with the offensive line and receiver group they have. Trech Kikahuna and Vinny Anthony II, I think, make up good wide receivers. And they upgraded their D-end and D-tackle rooms big time. They have some capable linebackers, and their secondary could be one of the best in the Big Ten with Nazir Forcorine, Ricardo Hallman at corner, Austin Brown at safety, Preston Zachman at safety. And I think Mike Tressel, I think the world of him as a DC. I think the world of Luke Fickell as a head coach. So I'm staying strong on the fact that I think Wisconsin ultimately is it's for the better that Wisconsin has Luke Fickell than not. At 8th, we have Nebraska in terms of Big Ten power rankings. Nebraska should have won more games last year than just 6 with the talent that they had. But they lost to UCLA, they lost to Illinois, they lost to Iowa despite outgaining them by nearly 200 yards. That's a team where if you just change a few things, or maybe Marcus Satterfield is fired after 2023, and maybe Rule overreacts a bit, but in a way that works out, they might go 7-5 or 8-4, or even 9-3. This year, given the changes they've made, I think it's a guarantee they're going to improve in terms of win-loss record, and they're going to improve in power ratings and power rankings. I hesitate to put them higher because of all they lose on defense. Nash Hutmacher, Ty Robinson, Princely Unman Malin, they're gone, or Princewell Unman Malin. They're gone, off to different schools. It's same with a lot of other players too. They lost a ton in their defensive line, a ton in their two deep. And I don't have anyone on their defensive line, D-end or D-tackle, on my 6 all Big Ten teams. So I do not think that unit will be good. But Vincent Shavers Jr., Dasan McCullough, and Marquise Watson-Trent might make up the best linebacker room in the Big Ten. And I think that Andrew Marshall and Sierra Wright at corner, the projected starting corners, will be awesome. So 8 all Big Ten players, 16 in the all Big Ten team depth, same as Wisconsin. The only reason Nebraska's higher than Wisconsin is actually quarterback. I think that Dylan Ryle is a much better quarterback than Billy Edwards Jr., and I think that schedule will play a part too. Nebraska's a much easier schedule, so by the end of the year, they won't be quite as worn as Wisconsin. If they had identical schedules, I might almost boldly say Wisconsin might be better than Nebraska this year, but they're very similar teams. I think the rosters for both of them match up to break out this year. Nebraska's schedule and the fact that they did a much better job, and it's a credit to Rule, they did a much better job at recruiting quarterback than Wisconsin did a much better job of pulling some X-factor players compared to Wisconsin. Wisconsin's more of like a gritty team, an older team. I think they're deeper than Nebraska in most parts, but they do not have the ceiling that Nebraska does. So the ceiling, easier schedule, and the fact that they basically have 2 head coaches in Dana Holgerson and Matt Rule in terms of experience, in Wisconsin as one. Those were some of the tiebreakers that pushed Nebraska ahead of Wisconsin for me. At 7th, we have Illinois. Illinois is a team where I actually expect them to regress in terms of record compared to 2024 with how many close games they won. But with how much they bring back, I think that they're going to be one of the better teams in the middle of the Big Ten. Not quite upper third. We'll get to that. But I have them with 10 all Big Ten players, 15 if you count the 5th and 6th teams. And Luke Altmaier is a better quarterback in my mind for all the teams we've talked about so far, minus Washington's DeMond Williams Jr. And Altmaier is much more proven than DeMond Williams Jr. Maybe I'm disrespecting Luke Altmaier by ranking him behind him, but having a really good quarterback, having Tanner Arkin at tight end, Josh Krutz and J.C. Davis returning at center and tackle and other offensive linemen, and then having Xavier Scott, Matthew Bailey, Miles Scott, Torrey Cox Jr., and Caleb Patterson, almost all of their secondary, if not all of their secondary, comes back. That right there, as of right now, is, I would say, the best, or it's certainly a top 2 secondary in the Big Ten. Certainly. I don't think that's debatable. The question for Illinois is, I think, what Aaron Henry can do at DC. I think this is a prove-it year for him. How do they pan out on the defensive line where they're relying a lot on transfers? And also, Can the offensive line take steps forward when it was one of the worst in the Big Ten last season? If they can do all those things, if all those ifs are answered positively for Illinois, then yes, this team could and might even be favored to reach the playoffs. But that's a lot of ifs to answer, in my opinion. At 6th, we have USC. Finished 7-6, 4-5 in the Big Ten. Lost a lot of close games. I'm optimistic about USC. Not only were they top third in the Big Ten in power ratings last year because they tied everyone or led everyone in the fourth quarter, and were one of the only teams to do that in college football. Not only that, but Lincoln Riley typically wins 70% of his close games, and he lost the majority of them last year. And that 70% number includes last year's number, so it's probably closer to, 80% close games being won by Riley is the norm. So taking that into consideration, along with D'Anton Lynn and his staff being in year 2, and USC having the recruiting portal momentum they do, hiring Chad Bowen, hiring Tremaine Carroll as the strength and conditioning coach, I love the energy this team has, and I think some of it is going to translate to on-field success. Their running back room could be one of the deeper rooms in the Big Ten. Waymon Jordan, Eli Sanders, and Brian Jackson, I think, are all capable Power 4 starters at running back, if not better than that. I think Jaden Mayava, I don't have him as the best Big Ten quarterback, not even close, but he's also in a stacked conference for quarterbacks, so he'll be one of the better QBs in the nation. Definitely better than he was last year. I think their offensive line's a little bit underrated, and Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane make up an awesome wide receiver duo. Combine that with the fact that this is the deepest USC defensive line in a long time, long time, and I think Eric Gentry is an All-American at linebacker. I have him tabbed as the best linebacker overall in the Big Ten, and Kamari Ramsey comes back. I think that USC is going to take steps forward. They may not be much better in power rankings/ratings compared to last year, but I think their win-loss record is going to be way better. And I mean way better, as in definitely 2 games better, and I would say it's more likely than not 3 games better. Could be 4 games better, or even better than that. We have Michigan at 5th. Michigan returns over 60% of their production, unlike a lot of the teams around them, so that helps them improve. And they've done a good job on defense, I think, developing and recruiting there. They also return the majority of their O-line. I love Bryce Underwood at quarterback. I think that's a guy who, even as a freshman, can take over games on his own. Only his supporting cast limits him. And for Michigan, that's wide receiver, where I think they have one of the worst wide receiver rooms in the Big Ten. Have a good one in Donovan McCulley, but outside of that, I don't know who else in that room can even be good. Marlon Klein comes back at tight end, but Colston Loveland leaves, and then Kalel Mullings leaves at running back. The 2D tackles, first-rounders, Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham depart. I think Michigan's D-line will take steps back, as anyone with logic should, but I think that Derek Moore is a great D-end. TJ Guy and Cameron Brandt, I think, will be better than they were last year. And look at this D-tackle room. Rayshawn Benny, Trey Pierce, Damon Payne Jr., Ike Awuna, Trey Williams. I have 5 Michigan defensive tackles, 5 of them, on my All-Big Ten team. Now, again, 6 total teams, so a lot of teams, not all of them are first or second teamers, but all of them are fourth teamers. Whether you look at the PFF grades, the incoming talent, the fact that Lou Esposito's a good coach, this D-line is going to be really stinking good. And then when you look at linebacker, 4 seniors there, you have Rod Moore coming off of injury. If he can play and play healthy at all this year, that's going to be an upgrade over what Michigan had last year. Brandon Hillman should emerge, and then Yair Hill was graded very highly at corner at the end of last year. This should be a top 5 defense. The question is, how big is the drop-off on the defensive line? I think the answer there is going to be not a whole lot, but definitely some that'll be noticeable at points. The bigger question that I have a harder time answering positively is the offense. It'll definitely take steps forward, large steps forward with the quarterback talent, but wide receiver will limit that unit. And that, along with the fact that while I have Michigan's coaching staff is a good staff, could be great, it's not even close to elite, unlike the final 4 teams that we'll be talking about. Indiana actually has the second best coaching staff in the Big Ten by my grades, but because of their talent limitations, they're 4th in power rankings. I think Indiana will be better than they were last year. Last year, they were 10th or 11th in power ratings, whether it was FPI or S&P+. I have them top 8 this year. And I think that this year will be a similar year to last year. Maybe a little bit weaker due to the low returning production, but I think Indiana will be a better team this year than last year. That's a bold prediction I have. They return over 60% of their production. I think that Mendoza is an upgrade over Rourke, and I'm going to make a video about that. And then Roman Hemby and Lee Beebe Jr. is a much better running back duo than what they had last year. Combine that with Pat Coogan coming in from Illinois and Drew Evans and Bray Lynch returning at guard along with Carter Smith at tackle. This O-line should be better, particularly at running the football. And they return Elijah Surratt. I think that Indiana's D tackle unit is underrated. Tyreek Tucker is awesome, and then Dominique Ratcliffe and Jose Wheeler, 2 incoming transfers, I think will fit well in the Big Ten. At D-end, they returned Michael Kamara and said that wasn't enough, and they brought in Stephen Daly from Kent State, who's a good MAC D-end, and Kellen Wyatt, a Maryland D-end, who I had in my All-Big Ten team. They also returned D'Angelo Pons. So, for whatever it's worth, I think this Indiana defense is once again going to be among the nation's elite, like it was at the end of the year. And this offense might have more juice to it because they have more of an NFL quarterback in Mendoza and return a lot of key players and bring in some Power 4 starters. I'm high on Indiana. I think you should be too. However, I understand if you think with a tougher schedule, they're going to take a step back record-wise. We have Ohio State at 3rd. Reigning national champions, 14-2 record. I actually haven't mentioned, I need to stop doing that, forgetting the number of all Big Ten players. So I'm going to quickly rehash them. USC, 10 all Big Ten players, 19 if you count the 5th and 6th teamers, the honorable mentions. For Michigan, 18 all Big Ten players, 27 in the honorable mention. Michigan is a team that's really, really deep, but they don't have a lot of high caliber proven guys, which is why I have them at 5th. Indiana, 18 all Big Ten players, 26th in the honorable mention, including the honorable mention. Much like Michigan, I think Indiana actually has more proven high twitch guys than Michigan does, just slightly more, and also a better staff, which is why I think Indiana is actually significantly better than Michigan, not just a little bit better than Michigan. Ohio State, 16 all Big Ten players, 22 once you factor in the 5th and 6th team. So on the surface, you might think, well, you have them with less all Big Ten players than Indiana and Michigan. You think they're going to be worse, and the answer is no. No, because they have way more alien players than either Indiana and Michigan do. They have the 2 best players in college football, who are worth multiple first-team All-Big Ten players by themselves. You simply by putting Caleb Downs and Jeremiah Smith in the All-Big Ten first team, you cannot quantify how much better they are than the second guy behind them. You can't. It's impossible. So that, along with their sheer talent potential, puts them in the top 3 for me. I do think, though, that Ohio State will have concerns with overall depth, with how much they lose and the fact that they relied a lot on seniors last year. It's similar from Michigan to 2024 to 2025, or from 2023 to 2024, although I think Michigan, particularly defensively, did a better job rotating in 2023, and I think they were much deeper and more talented overall on defense in 23 than Ohio State was in 24. Ohio State just compensated for that with a better DC than what Michigan had in Jim Knowles versus Jesse Minter, and they lose Jim Knowles. So there's some questions there, and I think there might be some questions for Ohio State at other positions. I know that Ohio State fans often think this O-line will be top 10, but I don't think there's much evidence to back that up. They'll be a good unit nationally. I think once again average by Ohio State standards, but I think Bowen's going to have them humming in a year. I think after a year of kind of clearing things out, assessing the room, and recruiting, I think that in 2026, Ohio State will be a really good team. I have them as my way too early national championship pick for 2026. I've spent a lot of time talking about them, but that's because I do have them ranked third behind two teams they beat last year. And I also want to spend some time, similar amount of time, talking about the two teams that are ahead of them, which you can obviously guess. This team will still compete for national titles, though. Ohio State will. Not just 2 years from now in 26, but this coming year as well. They're just way too talented. Ryan Day's the second best head coach in America. And Julian Sayin, I never thought I'd be saying this. Julian Sayin's very underrated. There are many people who don't have him as a top 5 Big Ten quarterback. He's guaranteed to be top 5. I'll tell you that right here. We have Oregon at number 2. Oregon is similar to Ohio State, where I don't think they have quite as much depth at certain positions as Michigan or even Indiana, but their talent profile is just so big, and their potential for aliens is so much larger than that of the Wolverines or the Hoosiers that I have them significantly ahead of them, especially Michigan. Indiana's staff might be able to compensate for some of the lack of talent. Michigan's, I don't think so. Oregon, Ohio State, Indiana, Penn State, that's the top 4 because I think they have all easily top 10 staffs in college football. I think all of them have top 8 staffs guaranteed, though I'll have to check on that. Oregon has 19 all Big Ten players, 23 when you include the 5th and 6th team, the honorable mentions. Mekhi Hughes is a wonderful player. Manuel Pregnon, Isaiah World, Alex Harkey will make up an awesome offensive line. What I'm more interested in with Oregon, besides Mateo Uyunglele on defense, is their potential to have multiple true freshman players impacting them. For Ohio State, for example, last year that was Jeremiah Smith, and I think Devin Sanchez can be that for them this year. For Oregon, I look at Naeem Offord and Trey McNutt to have significant playing time this year, along with on offense, Brycen Moore. I think that Ohio State and Oregon share this thing in common. What they share is that at the beginning of the year, they may not even be top 10 caliber teams. They may start pretty low, but as the season goes on, they will get better as long as they're healthy. Because again, I think depending on the position you look at, they're pretty thin. And if they get a key injury in any of those positions, that could, knock them out of contention. They're not quite, in my mind, like Texas in the SEC, where Texas has just spent so much money and is recruited at such a deep level to where even after they lose a bunch, they don't have any position room where I think they're thin at, outside of maybe tight end. So Oregon and Ohio State are close, but not quite like that. They have some areas where they could get an injury, and you're just looking at that room totally differently for the rest of the year. I think for both units, that's the case actually at D-tackle. I know people have talked about Oregon's defensive line as a unit that could be really good this year. You can't say Ohio State's D-line has concerns and then turn around and say that Oregon's doesn't. They're built very similarly. A lot of talent, a lot of upside, not a whole lot of proven potential, and based on what I've seen, I think there are some concerns in both. They're also similar in the fact that at the end of the year, they'll definitely be top 6, top 5 caliber teams. I think Oregon will actually start the year worse than Ohio State. Thankfully, since they don't play Texas and Ohio State does, you may not notice that like you could with Ohio State. Not saying they'll lose to Texas. Haven't made a prediction yet, but I think Texas right now is better than both these teams and will start the year off that way. But sometimes the best team doesn't always win. But I think, well, let's say that my top finger is Ohio State. Bottom finger is Oregon. I think what will happen is as the year goes on, Oregon will surpass Ohio State, at least for this year. And the reasoning for that is I think because both teams are thin at certain areas, I think that Oregon has more impactful true freshmen. And I also think Oregon's O-line is way better. It's not even close in my mind with what Oregon brought in through the portal and with what they bring back. So that's why I have Oregon ahead, even though I believe Day is a better head coach than Lanning. And if these two teams played against each other due to matchups, I'd probably pick Ohio State to win. But again, this is a power rankings video, not a prediction segment. Penn State's at 1. I don't even think it's close. Penn State has more all Big Ten players than anyone else has all Big Ten players factoring in the honorable mentions. So in my top 4 teams in the Big Ten, Penn State has 28 players. Michigan and Indiana, Ohio State, and Oregon, when you factor in the honorable mentions, don't even have that much. And when you factor in the honorable mentions for Penn State, I have 35 players. They're deep. They're old. They have the best coordinator duo in football. They have the best quarterback in the Big Ten, in my mind. The best running back duo in football. The best guard in football in Vega Ione. The second best center in Nick Dawkins. Their wide receiver core is worse than Ohio State's. It's worse than USC's. That's literally it. I think it's going to be better than Oregon's, based on proven production, certainly. And I think it will even be better than Indiana's. Their tight end room is the deepest in the Big Ten. You look at D tackle, I think Zane Durant's the best overall D tackle. Denai Dennis Sutton could be that at end. Tony Roas could be that at linebacker. I think A.J. Harris is the best overall corner. I love Zakee Wheatley at safety. Caleb Downs is just in the same conference. That's why he's not the number 1 overall safety. And they return their special teamers. They weren't too good last year, but returning them should help, and I think they should improve. Look, James Franklin's the only thing holding this team back. If Ryan Day was coaching this team, I would pick this team to probably beat everyone by double digits. If Ryan Day was the head coach here, they would beat everyone by double digits, and they'd go 16-0 if they had Ryan Day as their coach with this staff and roster. That's what I would pick, straight up. Especially since, just to make a little joke, they don't play Michigan, and Michigan's not going to Indy. So, yeah. And if Day were at Penn State, that wouldn't even be a problem. It's the same thing if Dan Lanning were Penn State's head coach. If Cignetti was Penn State's head coach. If all you did was change the head coaches, kept the staff, kept the roster, so many head coaches I think would go undefeated with this roster. I genuinely think it's that good. I am that high on Penn State, but Franklin is a question mark, and that does give me some pause as to how high I am on Penn State, because that man has not won a top 5 national championship caliber matchup since 2016. And I don't even know if that Ohio State team was national championship caliber. So Penn State's my best overall team in the Big Ten, number 1 overall team in America, and I don't think it's particularly close. Those are my Big Ten predictions. Again, may I remind you, just because I have Penn State as that good of a team does not mean I'm picking them to win the Big Ten. Hit the notification bell so that you can get notified when I release my Big Ten predictions video. And make sure to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts down below. Thank you all so much, and I will see you around. Okay, enough with that. We got through it, guys. Took a while, but we got through it. Let's see if we have any we do have a $2 super chat, and damn, we have almost 50 concurrent viewers. Holy cow, that's insane. Insane. I know people might think 50 concurrent viewers, what's this guy smoking? But that's huge for the channel. Huge. So yeah, thank you guys. Let me get to the $2 super chat. If any of you have other super chats, please send them in. I'm going to get off in 10 minutes here. But if you send in a super chat, I will answer your question guaranteed. I'll be obligated to do so. Let's check out whatever the $2 super chat was. I think it was from Chris Lane. Yes, knew it. Knew it because Chris Lane is old reliable. I don't even know if he's old. I'm just, using that phrase because it's a common phrase. Chris Lane, you've donated at this point probably $100 to the channel, if not more. I thank you for all your support. You're wonderful to interact with. You're a moderator on the channel. Thank you. I appreciate you. Just wanted to shout you out and give you the praise that you deserve. He likes Illinois because of the schedule. I get that. Look, if I'm wrong about their O-line having limited upside and their D-line pans out, this team could go 11-1. I hesitate on saying 12-0. Now I'm lagging, but the good news about that is that took a while to lag. Thankfully, after the segments I have to cut up. I have no idea why it's doing this right now. No idea. I think it may be because I opened the pop-out chat. Let me try closing this window here. Yeah, it's back to normal now. Okay. Now that the lag's out of the way, My pause about Illinois is they went 5-2 in close games. Actually, I think it was 5-1. 5-1 in close games. And if you want to count the Michigan game as a close win and maybe the Penn State game as a close loss, they went 6-2. That's unsustainable. They're going to have to get probably 2 touchdowns or more better in order to play for the playoffs, because that way they'll avoid playing close games that they could lose, and they'll beat all the teams they should beat and teams of about equal caliber. They will need to get that much better in order to be a playoff team, and I just don't see that happening, but I understand where you're coming from. Their toughest game of the year is against Ohio State at home, and I already went over the fact that I think Ohio State has some depth issues. Like, guys, last year, think about it this way. Illinois is returning 70% of their production, and Ryan Day's Ohio State's returning about 45% of their production from a team that last year, in the regular season, had their worst record of a Ryan Day team in conference play, nearly went 9-3, nearly was his most disappointing team. When I look at it this year, defensively, they're much better set up than they were in 2021 or even entering 2022. But offensively, they don't have quite what those teams did in terms of consistency or potential across the board. Like, I don't think Sayin in year one will be like C.J. Stroud, because most quarterbacks, even 5 stars as redshirt freshmen, do not play as well as C.J. Stroud did as a redshirt freshman. The offensive line is its worst in terms of top 100 players, in terms of 4-star and 5-star. They don't even have a 5-star player on the roster on the offensive line right now for Ohio State. So that team going on the road early enough in the year against an Illinois team with a lot of experience gives Illinois a fighting chance. But even if they beat Ohio State, it's not a guarantee they'll beat Washington on the road or USC at home or Indiana on the road. It's not. I mean, they played so many teams close last year, including Purdue, where, I mean, they could beat Ohio State and go 10-2, or even beat Ohio State and go 9-3 and miss the playoffs. This team has a lot of upside, but also a low floor. So thank you for the $2 super chat. I appreciate it. I ultimately think Indiana is going to, I said Indiana instead of Illinois. I do think Indiana will beat Illinois, by the way. And I do think Illinois will lose more games than they did last season. Boo. Why is everything lagging? And this, I'm not streaming in 4K anymore, so I shouldn't be lagging. But I don't know if I am. That may have been that just one brief time. Blue Wolverine, thank you for the $20 super chat. That's crazy. Give us a go blue, Sam. That's easy. Go blue. Go blue. I'll give it. It's not that hard. I mean, I'm a Michigan fan who can give out like chants for even rival schools. Won't say it out of respect to your super chat, but I basically do it whenever anyone else asks me. So yeah, go blue. Thank you, Blue Wolverine, for the $20 super chat. That's massive. We've already had a pretty big day today on YouTube, so I appreciate that a lot. Thank you. If you have a question for me before I get off, Blue Wolverine, feel free to ask it and I'll answer it for free. Max Ellis says, I love how positive Sam is in Indiana. Hopefully a harbinger of good things to come. Evie, I think my ears are bleeding. You're funny. Jude Hansen, hey Sam, last week I made a college football playoff proposal and you said you'd make a video about it. When will that video be out? Let me check on my phone and see if like I have it. Did you put it in my Discord server? Because if you did, then I don't know how soon that video will be made, but it'll definitely be made. Or maybe I took a screenshot of it, but I don't know. Yeah, I don't think I wrote it down. So Jude Hansen, I apologize for that. If you could send it right now. Yeah, Jude, if you could resend that right now, I'll bring up snipping tool and snip it, and then I'll put it in my sheet. I apologize for that. But I'll make a video about it probably this week. honestly. Oh, I know what it was. It was the New Year's Six Bowl games are used as like consolation games, like third place games, which they used to have in the tournament. That's what it was. It was a sweet idea. But if you could retype it out so I could have like a clear question in case I missed anything, I will gladly make a video on that sometime in the next 7 days. Gladly, because I think it's a wonderful proposal. I'll just wait until you type that all out. If anyone has any other questions, send them in, super chat or not. Of course, super chats are encouraged, but not obligatory, because I have to go on a walk with my dad shortly. It's a promise I make to him. It's good. It's healthy. I'm basically on a computer all day for work. So, yeah. What's going on with this? Maybe I have to close it out. The money 5675 message retracted. What's that about? Top 5 QBs in the Big Ten. Oh, this is going to be fun. Let's see if I can remember it off the top of my head. Top 5 quarterbacks in the Big Ten. I give you Drew Aller at 1. Julian Sayin at 2. I give you Bryce Underwood at 3. I give you Fernando Mendoza at 4. And I give you Dante Moore at 5. Mendoza, this is what I will say. Based on a combination of proof and talent, Mendoza and Underwood, I think, should be ahead of Sayin, but Sayin's supporting cast and Day's coaching is so good to where I can't put him lower than 3. And if he is at 3, Mendoza has to be the one that's ahead of him. I can't put a true freshman ahead of Julian Sayin. Can't do it. Even though Underwood could be like that, he is that talented. He is. And I think that he is going to... I think he's going to be insane in year 1. But I cannot put him ahead of Julian Sayin, at least this year. Michigan needs to show that their staff is capable of not being a bunch of, like, dunces before I can have them with a number 1 overall offensive player in the Big Ten, in the conference Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon reside in. Okay, Jude, thank you for your question. I'm going to bring up Snipping Tool right now. I'm going to bring it up. Yeah, those are my top 5 Big Ten quarterbacks. Underwood's the bold one. That's the only reason I have Michigan ahead of USC is quarterback play. No, come on. And yeah, Underwood over Moore. I know it's bold, but I saw Moore play as a true freshman, and he had some issues. And I just trust Julian Sayin, having rested his freshman year. Moore was thrown in the fire, and that can sometimes... I don't know. It's ridiculous. It's a bad end of the stream. Not doing it now. But that's a bad way to end out the stream. Yeah, EV, Underwood's wide receivers are... I think his running capability, which his athleticism with his legs is some of the best in the conference, could be the best. I think that will help him compensate for the receivers to a certain degree, especially since their schedule isn't the toughest in the world. But if Michigan does reach the playoffs, and once they eventually, in that CFP, play an elite defense, because I don't think they'll host a game. I think Michigan, with their schedule, would have to go 11-1 to host a playoff game, and I'm not confident they'll do that. That team on the road in the playoffs against a defense that's likely top 10 or top 5, their offense would be dead. Dead pretty quickly. They're just a little too young there, too clunky. Again, I have no clue why why it's doing this. This is like rather annoying, especially since it says my connection's good. Like right now it says my connection's good, but then it will go in and out, in and out. Okay, Christian Torberg, thank you for the $2 super chat. I appreciate it a lot. Really appreciate it. If you do have a question, talk to me. National championship at the Rose Bowl is also the Rose Bowl game. Yeah, I got that. I remember that. I snipped your comment live. It's in my folder, and I'll write it down. Catching up on the stream, completely agree with you on LSU. I keep seeing them top 10 in the country, and frankly, I don't see it at all. Yeah, I don't see it either. I just don't. Ethan Kayak Manis is underrated, says Death Star 123. Well, Minnesota at one point said he had a Death Star caliber arm. Would be awesome if he could show that at Rutgers. I'd love to see Rutgers good. Okay, I don't have the time anymore to answer more questions. If any of you did have questions or wanted to send a super chat, you can send it in tomorrow when we'll be live at 6 p.m., and I'll answer those at the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. Tomorrow will be ACC and Big 12 power rankings, along with maybe some other content if I have the time. I'll see you all very soon. Have a fantastic night.